come back from that commercial break, like we said earlier, we shall be bringing you the signing of the budgets by the president at the presidential villa, and after that we'll be going into our discussion proper.
One nation, peace and unity.
Excellency President, Senate, President, National Assembly, Senate will do appropriation bill. And Excellency Mr. President, this
Speaker, Speaker,
to be supported by the President.
Should I?
Titled Budget of Economic Growth. Excellency.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Speaker of the House of Representatives,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I am delighted to sign into law today the 2022 appropriation bill, as well as the enabling 2021 finance bill. I would like to thank the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and indeed all the distinguished and honorable leaders and members of the National Assembly for the expeditious consideration and passage of these bills. I also appreciate the continuing cooperation and commitment of the Ninth National Assembly to the restoration of a predictable January to December fiscal year as provided for in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The Finance Bill 2021 is particularly critical for the successful implementation of the 2022 budget. Its passage further underscores our firm commitment to regularly support federal appreciation bills with finance bills designed to facilitate their implementation. I equally appreciate the continued mutual understanding, collaboration, and productive engagements between officials of the executive and the legislative arms of government, which have made this expeditious consideration as well as passage of the bills possible. We must continue to sustain this partnership in the interest of our people in order to ensure the effective implementation of the budget and realization of its laudable objectives. As you will recall, I laid the 2022 appropriation bill before the joint session of the National Assembly on the 7th of October 2021 and forwarded the 2021 finance bill thereafter. This administration remains committed to the early presentation of the annual appropriation bill to the National Assembly to ensure its passage before the beginning of the fiscal year. The 2023 budget is going to be a transition budget. Work will start in earnest to ensure early admission of the 2023 to 2025 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, as well as the 2023 appropriation bill to the National Assembly. Heads of ministries, departments, and agencies are to cooperate with the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, more especially with the Budget Office of the Federation, to realize this very important objective. The 2022 budget that I just signed into law provides for aggregate expenditure of 17.127 trillion naira, an increase of 735.85 billion naira over the initial executive proposal, for a total expenditure of 16.391 billion naira. 186.53 billion naira of the increase, however, came from additional critical expenditures that I had authorized the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning to forward to the National Assembly. The Minister will provide the public the details of the budget as passed by the National Assembly and signed into law by me. As I mentioned during the presentation of the 2022 appropriation bill, the fiscal year 2022 is very crucial in our efforts to complete and put to use critical agenda projects, as well as improve the general living conditions of our people. It is in this regard that I must express my reservations about many of the changes that the National Assembly has made to the 2022 executive budget proposal. Some of the worrisome changes are as follows. A, increase in projected federal government independent revenue by 400 billion naira, the justification for which is yet to be provided to the executive. B, reduction in the provision for sinking fund to retire maturing bonds by 22 billion naira without any explanation. C, reduction of the provisions of the non-regular allowances of the Nigeria Police Force and the Nigerian Navy by 15 billion naira and 5 billion naira respectively. This is particularly worrisome because personnel cost provisions are based on agencies' nominal role and approved salaries and allowances. D, furthermore, an increase of 21.72 billion naira in the overhead budgets of some MDAs, while the sum of 1.96 billion naira was cut from the provision for some MDAs without apparent justification. E, increase in the provision for capital spending, excluding capital share and statutory transfer, by a net amount of 575.63 billion naira from 4.89 trillion naira to 5.47 trillion naira. Nonetheless, provisions for some critical projects were reduced. These include 1. Reduction of 12.6 billion naira in the Ministry of Transport's budget for the ongoing rail modernization projects. 2. Reduction of 25.8 billion naira from power sector reform program under the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. And 3. Reduction of 14.5 billion naira from several projects of the Ministry of Agriculture and introducing over 1,500 new projects into the budget of this ministry and its agencies. F. Inclusion of new provisions totaling 36.59 billion naira for National Assembly's projects in the service-wide vote, which negates the principle of separation of powers and financial autonomy of the legislative arm of government. G. The changes to the original executive proposal are in the form of new insertions, outright removals, reductions, and/or increases in the amounts allocated to projects. I. Provisions made for as many as 10,733 projects were reduced, while 6,576 new projects were introduced into the budget by the National Assembly.
Okay, that was the president's speech after he signed into law the 2022 budget at the presidential villa. Like I said earlier, there were some reservations which the president raised during his presentation on Friday. And this morning we shall be looking at the budget and its implementation for the year 2022. And some of those observations that the president actually pointed out and how worrisome they are. I have joining me via phone this morning is an economist and an in-house analyst, Ishao Aliyu. A very good morning to you, sir. A very good morning to you, sir, Mr. Ishao Aliyu. Hello. A very good morning to you, sir. Okay, we'll take a quick break here. When we return, we'll reconnect to Ishao Aliyu. It seems we're having the challenge there getting back to him. But we'll return back to the president on that address where he signed the budget while we try to get back to our guests who is joining us via phone.
Reduction in the provisions for many strategic capital projects to introduce empowerment projects. The cuts in the provisions for several of these projects by the National Assembly may render the projects unimplementable or set back their completion, especially some of this administration's strategic capital projects. Most of the projects inserted relate to matters that are basically the responsibilities of state and local governments and do not appear to have been properly conceptualized, designed, and costed. Many more projects have been added to the budgets of some MDAs with no consideration for the institutional capacity to execute the additional projects and/or for the incremental recurrent expenditure that may be required. It is surprising that despite the National Assembly increasing projected revenues by 609.27 billion naira, the additional executive request of 100 and 86.53 billion naira for critical expenditure items could not be.
Yeah, we now have Aisha Wali on the line now with us this morning. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you. Now, you've seen the New Year gifts Nigerians received from the president by signing the budgets into law. As soon as you saw that, what was your first reaction to it, sir?
My first reaction is the fact that now Mr. President has probably one of the most challenging period of his time, being the last full monetary and fiscal policy implementation cycle. But what I realize is the fact that the budget is too ambitious for two reasons. One, Mr. President wanted to achieve so many goals within 365 days, but he has a challenge with the input of the budget, and he has also a challenge with how to fully implement what it takes to make his project completed within the same period. But I think it's a good option for Nigerians to understand that budget is very necessary to their life, and it is also very important to the existence of corporate Nigeria.
Okay, when you talked about challenges in implementing the budget for the president, why did you refer to it as a challenge?
Yes, this is a budget in the history of Nigeria where the president immediately after signing it and is also telling the Nigerian people that he is equally about resending back the same budget to the National Assembly, not only sending it back to the National Assembly, but making certain adjustment in the same budget, and also express worrisome attitude with the National Assembly based on certain critical projects that he claimed were removed in the budget, and also based on the fact that an additional commitment from the National Assembly was added, and to him there is a lot of things that he thinks probably he will call for violence. That call for violence is very serious to an economy that is on transition.
Okay, let's look at what the National Assembly injected into the budgets that the president described as worrisome. At the point that the budget was transmitted to the president, would it have been right for him to have maybe go through it, return it, and before signing the budget, rather than coming before Nigerians and said he may have to return the budget back to National Assembly for them to, he may have to revert it back to the National Assembly after signing it into law?
You see, he doesn't have that option, and the economy is not also expecting that option. Okay. What the economy is expecting, we have already changed the budget cycle, the budget calendar, January 1st. Okay. So that January 1st, for the president to achieve that target, he has to sign the budget. There is no option on that. But at the same time also, in my own opinion, if I would have advised the president, I wouldn't have advised him to quickly inform Nigerians that there is going to be call for violence. That element in itself does not augur well to the economy, and is not also healthy for the economy, because investors, contractors, everybody has to be given a hope. Communities, legislators, political friends need to be activated. So the option that he has at that time was just to sign the budget. But my worry, based on his worrisome, is the fact that he expresses too much worry in signing the budget. The budget is expected to be presented by the president, and it is also expected to be scrutinized by the National Assembly. If the National Assembly have exercised certain role, what I expected from the Mr. President is to sign the law and to keep silent. and at the same time to call a stakeholder meeting with the key legislative officers. After having that key, then probably that type of assertion could be presented to the Nigerian public in an attempt to show Nigerians that the party, the APC is committed, the presidency is committed, the National Assembly is committed. It is not a time at which Nigerians will expect any tussle that has to do with either monetary or fiscal policies, tussle that has to do with appropriation or whatever. But what we are expecting is to be recording GDP growth rate that is positive and also complementary.
But some experts, like yourself, have argued that the National Assembly has no power to inject projects into the budget. But what the Constitution allows is for them to either to tinker with the figures, probably increase or reduce it. Did you share in that view, sir?
I don't share in that view. When scrutinization is mentioned, it is an underlying concept. If you are to scrutinize, it means that you can make an addition and you can make a subtraction. Making an addition does not you cannot just increase figure without increasing where the figure belongs. So there is contentious. In my own opinion, like I always try to stress, is the fact that we need to have a healthy relationship between executive and legislators. The legislators has to also consider that the constituency of Mr. President is within 774 local government of the Federation, while each legislator is legislating based on certain constituencies. Not only that, the president also has to also identify with certain other political factors that includes his own party, his own relationship with the party officials, his own relationship with the legislators. Remember that most of this conflict based on Nigerian federalism, where you have three arms of government, executive, legislature, and judiciary, the only contentious factor is the relationship between executive and the legislators. So if that is a fact, the legislators, we know quite okay, they are also committed to 774 local government in context, but in reality, each legislator has a constituency he belongs, and they also try as much as possible to show certain political factors that they also exist. But however, Mr. President in his own, that's why I told you that he has certain legislative, he has also certain executive powers that he must be exercising. But if he is exercising those powers, for him to remain relevant and with the most authority, there is need to make certain consultation. The consultation should not be limited to hands that is not trusted. If the executive is working with the Minister of Budget and the Minister of Budget, Minister of Finance and Budget, then also he has to be aware that he is also organizing and coordinating other ministries. Those ministries are also part of the executive. So the president must make very wide consultations and at the same time advise those executive arms to also work very, very much consultative with the legislators, so that when issue of harmonization comes, then there will be understanding, then the economy also enjoy from the understanding of the executive and the legislators.
Yeah, you've been able to try to prove that there is no power tussle between the National Assembly and the executive. But let's look at how this has borders the ordinary man, because once the budget is passed, an ordinary man believes that everything should be put back to order. Does this budget, does it really reflect the yearnings of Nigerians? Looking at the adjustments made, like the President rightly said, that some of these adjustments may affect the implementation of the projects he has for Nigerians to better the lives of Nigerians.
2022 is not a difference from budget 2021. And the implementation of budget 2021 may not be much difference with budget 2022 coming. We have observed over a period of time that the Mr. President in 2020 has asserted and also vehemently adopted an issue to collective prosperity. What collective prosperity always enshrines is the fact that if whatever arrangement is made inside an appropriation bill, it is targeting the GDP growth, but GDP growth is not enough. It's not enough without collective prosperity. And the president had clearly pointed out that in his budget, he will try as much as possible to include the entire segment of the economy, which the professionals, the politicians will be benefiting from the budget. It's not going to be possible with the kind of presentation we are making, where most of the legislators have direct contact and with the treasury, while the president is trying to limit, for instance, the number of poverty level, where he introduced probably not all, we cannot call them palliatives again, but we call them interventions. He has intervened, and what I always emphasize is the fact that maintaining price stability in the economy is what is going to take prosperity to people's, to everybody on his table. But the argument that is always portrayed is the fact that some of the interventions made by government in form of subsidies, in form of tax exclusion, is targeted toward taking this benefit to the ordinary Nigerian. But at the end, if the prices do not change, if there is inflation, the commoners, those ordinary Nigerians will continue to have challenges with the price. If they have challenges with the price, they will have challenges with their purchasing power. If they have the challenges with the purchasing power, they have challenges with the way they conduct their life, educationally, health-wise, and all consumptive procedures. So in my own opinion, Mr. President this year has already informed Nigerians through agencies that there is going to be change in petroleum, the premium motor spirit, PMS, within the period. And if there is change in that, why you change the PMS? Because of the elasticity of the price function of that same product as applied to all Nigerians, the multiplier effect of that is going to be devastating to the common people who are battling to see what they can eat. I have argued times to that number. Mr. President, in many times, sympathized with farmers, and that is why he thought we must grow what we eat. There are two things there. Once you want us to grow what we eat, you also have to determine at what price we are going to eat what we produce based on the income of the people. If your people doesn't have an enhanced income and we are producing what we are producing, the income of the ordinary Nigerian cannot buy, cannot purchase what we are producing, then they cannot be part of this prosperity that economy is witnessing. And if, for instance, government says probably we have a project that we are going to take 100 millions of Nigerians out of poverty. With that statement alone, it has shown that Nigeria has over 100 million below the poverty. So we cannot be jumping issues. If you have high number of people who are attracted to poverty line, who are also victims of poverty line, then you have to boost their consumption. If you boost their consumption, you are boosting their morality. If you are boosting their morality, you are boosting their patriotism. If you boost their patriotism, you are boosting their So I think the budget has to do much to tackle the income of the people, and to also, but you can only do that when you make sure that you maintain stability in the general price level, where the purchasing power of people remains significant in respect to their limited incomes.
Well, do you possibly see any change in this budget if the president succeed in reverting it back to the National Assembly? Would that have any implications, sir?
No matter what, if I will advise the president, if I would advise the policy makers, I will advise them to work with the budget for first quarter and second quarter to see the performance in the first quarter and see the performance in the second quarter. This is what is called testing a hypothesis. But without testing, and you distort, when you are distorting the input you are putting in an economy, and you are not sure that even when you are taking it to National Assembly, none of them, if the president signs under duress and then decided to revert back the budget to the National Assembly, either for violence or for any other economic reason, he is supposed to now forecast the behavior. You have to censor the opinion that is it likely the National Assembly to listen to my plea? Is it likely that if eventually we send this budget, the National Assembly are ready to work with us, or is it going to cause more confusion? If it causes a lot of confusion, then it means that there is going to be a tussle. And when that tussle came into an economy on a transition, definitely the president is leaving by 2023. And a high number of legislators are leaving by 2023. So, but the economy remains, and the ordinary Nigerian remains. The attitude of you see, that's why in many times when we are talking, we try to borrow what W.W. Rostow is telling us. We must change our attitude. The president understood certain attitude with the National Assembly. The National Assembly, in their own, refused to change a certain attitude. That attitude is understood by the two parties. And it's not wise, it's not good for Nigeria to understand that attitude that refuses to change between the legislators and the executive. And if it refuses to change, then the economy will witness. We will witness that when the budget is not working, when the relationship between executive and legislature is not also working. So there is need to make adjustment, not in the budget. We must make adjustment in our attitude first before we make concrete, good adjustment in our fiscal and monetary strategies.
Well, I must thank you so much for your thoughts on this discussion this morning, Ishawali. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Well, we'll take a quick break here, and when we return, the discussion on the budget continues. We'll be having another guest joining us via phone.
Critical expenditure items could not be accommodated without increasing the deficit, while the sum of 550.59 billion naira from the projected incremental revenues was allocated at the discretion of National Assembly. I signed the 2022 appropriation bill into law to enable its implementation to commence on the 1st of January 2022. However, I will revert to the National Assembly with a request for amendment and or amendment as soon as the Assembly resumes to ensure that critical ongoing projects that are cardinal to this administration and those nearing completion do not suffer a setback due to reduced funding. Despite the lingering adverse effects of coronavirus on budget implementation, I am happy with the success recorded in the implementation of the 2021 budget. The sum of 3.94 trillion naira that was provided for the implementation of capital projects by MDAs during the fiscal year has been released fully. To enable MDAs to complete the implementation of their 2021 capital project and optimize the impact of the capital budget on the economy, they have been allowed to continue to expand the funds released for their 2021 capital budget till 31st March 2022. I deeply appreciate the understanding and the speedy action of the National Assembly on this matter. As the 2022 budget will be the last full year budget to be implemented by our administration, its effective implementation is very critical for delivering our legacy projects, promoting social inclusion and strengthening the resilience of the economy. The Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planner will implement all measures required to ensure timely and targeted release of capital votes. All ministries, departments, and agencies are to effect early commencement of project implementation while ensuring productive use of funds provided for achievement of the objectives set for their sectors. Considering the incidence of new coronavirus variant globally, we will ensure timely implementation of measures provided for in the 2022 budget to contain the spread of the virus and protect our people. We continue to count on the collaboration of the state governments in our effort to protect the lives and livelihood of our people. To achieve the laudable objectives of the 2022 budget, we will further intensify our revenue mobilization efforts. I am optimistic about our ability to finance the budget considering the positive global oil market outlook and the continuing improvement in our non-oil revenues. To achieve our revenue targets, revenue generation agencies, and indeed all MDAs must ensure prompt and full remittance of collected revenues. Relevant agencies must also ensure the realization of our crude oil production and export targets. I also appeal to our fellow citizens and the business community at large to fulfill their tax obligations promptly. However, being a deficit budget, the specific borrowing plan will be forwarded to the National Assembly shortly. I count on the cooperation of the National Assembly for a quick consideration and approval of the plan when submitted. All borrowings will be judiciously utilized and invested in our future growth and prosperity. MDAs are to liaise with the Bureau of Public Enterprises and/or the Infrastructure Concession and Regulatory Commission to explore available opportunities for public-private partnerships, concessions, as well as climate finance arrangements to fast-track the pace of our infrastructural development. I thank the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, the Minister of State, Budget and national planner, the Budget Office of the Federation, and all who worked tirelessly and sacrificed so much towards producing the 2022 Appropriation Act that I signed today. Let me conclude by commending the understanding, sacrifice, and resilience of our people during these challenging times. As a government, we remain committed to improving the general living conditions of our people. We will continue to implement measures aimed at moderating the unintended negative effects of policies on the citizenry. I thank you most sincerely for your kind attention. May God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The Nine National Assembly has made it possible for the national budget to be implemented within the January to December cycle. What is the driving force and what next?
Well, the driving force, thank you very much for that very important and relevant question. The driving force is our ability in the National Assembly, in the two chambers, to work very amicably and productively. And then, of course, our ability as a National Assembly, as an institution, to work with the executive arm of government in such a manner that the processing of the budget estimates, as will be led by the President all the time, are done in such a way that every arm of government, all the two arms, participate fully at the appropriate time. You recall that in 2019 December for the budget 2020, Mr. President directed his ministers and chief executive officers of MDS not to travel at all until they defended their budgets. And that, of course, helped us a lot in the National Assembly. So the secret is cooperation, partnership, synergy, and that understanding and mutual respect. And of course, Nigeria is benefiting from that kind of relationship. So that is what, in my judgment and opinion, works for us to be passing the budget at the time that we always feel is the appropriate time, before the end of the year. And of course, Mr. President, congratulations to him for signing the 2022 appropriation bill today. Even though today is the last day of the year, but we have achieved that very significant, important date of signing before the end of the year. And let me also add here that, and this is, I hope doesn't spark any controversy, but it's a reality, it's what I've observed. The ability of the federal government to have its budget passed and signed before the end of the year has made so many states to also work towards achieving that. And by today, you would have noticed that more than half of our states would have signed the budget 2022. And that is the kind of leadership that the federal government is giving to the subnationals. Thank you.
But the president is not happy with the major changes by the National Assembly. What would you have to say about that?
I thought you would ask us what the president is happy with, because he's happy with most things and not the few things.
With what is not happy.
Well, I'm coming to that, but I think the most important thing is Mr. President is happy with the majority of what the National Assembly has done, and that's the most critical thing that we need to focus on. As for the observations Mr. President has raised, this is a natural and logical tendency between the executive and the legislature. Sometimes our views on certain issues may not be necessarily the same kind of views that the executive would have and hold on any particular matter. So I don't think what the president did by raising some observations as something that we should worry about. I'm happy that the president signed the budget in the first place, and he said he's coming back to the National Assembly to seek for amendments or violence, and this is natural, logical legislative process. So I'm happy that we have done our own part in our own way. This is based on judgments. When we ask for more resources coming from the independent sources, especially from the government-owned enterprises of about 400 to 500 billion is because we believe that these government-owned enterprises should contribute even much more. In fact, I hold the opinion that they should have contributed about $1 trillion at least, not 500 billion or so. So I believe that the National Assembly was right in its judgment, but there is nothing wrong in the executive arm of government coming back to the National Assembly to see how we are able to dialogue and go through the process and see where the misunderstanding is. But I don't think that is supposed to be worrisome development for us.
Speaker, sir, it's a transition budget. What are you going to do to ensure full implementation of the budget, to monitor it?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. Every year's budget is an improvement on the last one. So the transition budget which the president spoke about, as you heard him earlier, they're even going to bring it earlier in 2023, which gives us ample time, more time to work on it, improve on it, and make it a seamless budget with seamless execution and implementation. I don't think I have a problem with 2023. 2023 budget is going to come, it's going to go, and we're going to work on it, just like we've been working on the other budgets.
Thank you.
So what next, sir, after the signing of this budget, sir?
Of this budget?
House of Reps, yes.
For the House of Reps? Oh, we're on vacation now. When we come back on the 18th, you'll know what's next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're still watching the program this morning on Night TV. That was the concluding part of that speech by the president. And you saw the Senate president and the Speaker of the House of Representatives there giving their reactions soon after the president signed the budget into law. And I have joining with me as our second guest to look at the budget also is Engineer Kenneth Nze, is the Executive Director, Speak Out Africa Initiative. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, ITV.
And a very
Happy New Year.
Yeah, the same to you here, over here. Now, let's continue the discussion. The budget has been signed. From any moment from now, we're expecting civil societies to come up, a civil society like yours also, to come out and tell us what they think about the budget. And we're starting with you this morning. What do you think this budget stands for as far as Nigeria economy, Nigerian citizens are concerned?
Thank you. Like it is obtainable in every other setting, in any other climb, budget is an estimate being proposed, which is aimed at guiding the spendings of a government. So is not out of place, it's not a new thing, and it is within the democratic tenets. And so it's not a new thing for having a budget, because of course that is one of the tenets of democracy. That is actually what puts the government into the right perspective to guide them into what they spend. And the essence of budgets is that so that though it's not going to be accurate, it's not accurate, but it's an estimate, like I said. And the essence is to spending, to guide both the executive, legislation, and all the arms of government in spending, so that you don't just come and back on any spending outside what is budgeted for. Although in Nigeria this is not completely obtainable, we have seen examples of things being purchased, spendings being done both by the executive and by other arms of government without being budgeted for, which runs against the spirit and the principle of budgeting. Now, having established that, we all are aware that the president signed a budget of 17-point-something trillion naira. And for us in the civil society, we, and me personally, before now, Nigerians is aware that we have we have and we had a more pressing issue, which should have received the most attention of Mr. President, which was the electoral bill. We had told Mr. President on several occasions, and we had told the National Assembly that they should pause and suspend the passage of the budget before going on recess, and should channel the own energy back to that electoral bill, which the President returned based on some reasons which is now in open space about the mode of primaries, which is the contention.
Engineer Ken, are we not trying to contradict our point of discussion this morning, sir? Before you establish the connection between the budget and the electoral bill, let's just center our discussion on the bill. Probably subsequently we go into the electoral bill that was rejected by the president. But I want you to look at the content of the budget that was signed, as the president highlighted that he was displeased by some of the injections done by the National Assembly. According to the president, there were no consultation with the executive when those inputs were made.
Okay, thank you. I'm not digressing, rather. I'm not digressing anyway. You just didn't allow me to land.
Okay, please go ahead.
I first of all told you what budget is all about. And I move it further by saying that though the budget was signed, Nigerians are not happy. We are not moved. It's not a news to us.
Okay.
That is the point I was making.
Okay.
And I was trying to give you the reason why it is not a news.
Okay.
It's not because budget is not important, but because we had a more pressing issue that should have received attention, which he ought to have signed before talking about budget. That was why I brought this issue. And I cannot just say that without mentioning what is the issue. And I say it's electoral bill.
Okay.
And I went further by saying that now the reason is that the budget that was signed now, of course our budget cycle has not yet elapsed. The normal procedure, what they do is that they will have to be, shifted to March, ending of March. Then before they will start implementing this. So who was the opinion that why the rush? Is it just because they've been maintaining January to December timeline? So they want to make sure that they don't fail in any way. But be that was why I have to establish that we didn't receive it as any bigger news. Another reason for the budget is that this budget will be having the question you and I ask, and other Nigerian is that how is this affecting the life of Nigerians?
Yes.
Because we hear 8-something trillion last time, we hear today 17-something trillion, and Nigerians ask, they are still in abject poverty. It does not reflect to the ordinary Nigerians. So, and until this has a direct impact on the people, where people can now feed 3 times a day, when a graduate can now be able to get job, when a farmer can now be able to go to farm and plant and harvest and bring out his goods to sell his proceeds. So until all these things, we start seeing them, that is when Nigeria will begin to value budget. So I want to tell you that you may be surprised that it is only among the elites, you and I, that even knows about budget. Because for Nigerians, other Nigerians who cannot eat, for Nigerians that could not travel even to the village because they could not afford transport fare, those who are already getting scared, thinking of how to pay their house rent, this issue of budget means nothing to them. Some see it as means the political elites used to grease themselves. Now, coming on the main points, because I need to create background so that we don't just jump into the contestation between the president and National Assembly on the insertion of some projects.
Okay.
Now we are taking it up, and what I mean in our organization, Speak Out Africa Initiative, immediately the year is starting proper. We are going to take a matter on this because Nigeria has had it enough. Each year the budget is being signed, we hear of padding. What they do is they change the language, the nomenclature. For the previous years, they call it padding. And we hear different insinuations, accusations, and counter-accusations. But for this year, Mr. President put it, he did not use the word padding. But he frowned. He bemoans at that act. Even though the people he accused of doing it were standing by his side. Now, and the insinuation, the allegation was that several projects that of importance to the executive were removed. And the National Assembly is saying that they are not just they are not rubber stamp. We are not bound to take hook, link, and sinker anything you send and just pass it. That if that is the case, what is the essence of the executive even sending budget to the National Assembly?
But is that what the Constitution states, that the National Assembly, though they have the power to adjust figures, do they have the right also to inject projects that are coming from the executives?
Now, I don't think the power says that they have the right to do that. The right they have is to legislate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is why I told you that the Speak Out Africa initiative, we are going to take this upon ourselves. The reason is that the ordinary Nigerians, like I told you, are the ones suffering for all this. When two elephants are fighting, the grass suffers. These politicians are fighting for themselves. Now, what we want to do, because we have seen that the Constitution, and as far as what we have now, to the best of our knowledge, is that the National Assembly has the power to legislate. It was not stated categorically that they have the power to insert, remove, and do this and do all this thing. And the executive also claims from their point that you cannot come and just change our vision. We have a plan, we have a vision, we have a program, we have a goal. So when we send you a budget, you don't come and alter it. In fact, why it became worrisome to us as Speak Out Africa is that Mr. President said that this budget is unimplementable. That to us is not as unacceptable. Now the question is, why will you sign a budget that is not unimplementable? You have done it to other bills. Electoral bill was sent to you. You said no. There are gray areas. You resent it, but you did not assent to it. So why did you, as if you were under pressure or duress, and you are the commander in chief? So if you know that the budget is unimplementable, that it has been altered beyond measure, we had expected that he would have withdrawn his assent, send it back to the National Assembly and say, this was not what we sent to you, and let us be resolved. But you cannot tell Nigerians whose hope, whose life is dependent on the content of the budget, that the budget is unimplementable. Are you giving them a hope, or you are telling them that whatever they see they should take? That is why, for us, it is now high time we approached a court of competent jurisdiction, the Supreme Court, for the Supreme Court to now make it clear the limit of the power of the National Assembly. The Supreme Court, we are going to take it upon ourselves. The Supreme Court need to make it clear. Does the National Assembly has power to insert projects? It must be stated clearly. If they do not, let the court interpret it. Because this battle of the Executive and National Assembly, every year, and National Assembly claims that they are also working for the interests of Nigerians. That they cannot allow lopsided projects, whereby you see one section of the country having the whole major project and another area does not, that they are the one closer to the people. So the courts, the judiciary, we need to come in at this point and rescue Nigerians. We cannot have a budget of 17.something trillion being signed, and Mr. President will be telling Nigerians that this budget may be unimplementable. A statement that should have not emanated.
So what do you think the president should have done as soon as the budget was transmitted to him, when he saw those projects he said are unimplementable? Would he have returned the budget back to the National Assembly just like he did with the electoral bill?
Exactly. He had done it even with BIA, Petroleum Industrial Act. He has done it with several bills. And that is why I started by saying, I do not understand. While I will be signing a budget that I see that this is not what I sent, it has been altered beyond measure, and it's when you look at the implication of that statement, it's unimplementable. So why are you signing it? Is it for signing ceremonially, or is this to do what? So when we see all these things, that is why I say we are not happy, we are not moved by budget of 70.3 trillion being signed. We want to see it reflected on the lives of Nigeria. We want to see it translated into better living that I have enumerated. So we are going to approach the National Assembly, the Supreme Court rather, on this matter. The judiciary must intervene and rescue Nigerians. This has been happening. This is beyond the current administration. From the days of Dogara and Saraki, you start hearing from the days of Bassan, you start hearing budget padding, budget this, this is not what we send, this is what we send, and all this. But at the end of everything, Nigerians will be hearing trillions, hearing huge and humongous budgets. Yet, it does not translate into anything. Does not worry you that every year, each year to year, the economy keep as if it's the same thing. Because the political elites, we don't know whether they actually does not have the interest of Nigerians at heart. So it is high time the civil society, we must, because we are to keep the government on check, to approach the court of competent jurisdiction for the Supreme Court to make a pronouncement on the limit, the capacity, the power of the National Assembly as it regards budgeting. Should they accept everything from executive? Are they to insert? Are they not to insert? So that this can be buried for what? It's unfortunate it's coming late. But we will take that upon. If that is what we can achieve before 2023 election, we will take it upon ourselves.
So as we go forward, what do we expect that should be on ground now? So like you said, the budget for 2021 has not really elapsed until by March. Before we start the 2022 we start running. So what should be the solution?
Of course, the solution is one. On their part, the president have said he'll be sending supplementary, which is for me. I think whatever that is worth doing is worth doing well. You have the whole 12 months to prepare your budget. The essence of supplementary means that there are some things you forgot or some other things came up new. And it's because of what has happened now. So the Nigerian people, like I said, will still take the burden. When you're going to see the supplementary budget that will be sent again from this year, you are going to see again that even in the same National Assembly will not still pass the exact thing that the executive will bring. They will still are sacked. So what is happening? The Nigerian people are being robbed. The Nigerian people are at the receiving end. So, one is that I will advise, because Nigeria will not accept an unimplementable budget. We cannot accept that. So, we advise, the Mr. President is going to do exactly what he said, to send his supplementary budget to the National Assembly to correct whatever anomaly, whatever alteration that has been done. The second part is that we as a civil society, we are going to, like I said, approach the court. This thing must be solved once and for all. If the Supreme Court, for example, has made a pronouncement on this, there won't be all this hula ballo. There won't be all this saga of you have added, we have the rights, you don't have the rights. Why are you doing this? I know at the end. So these are the two things we believe. And lastly, is that we are asking the government. It is high time the budget reflected on the lives of Nigerians. And ordinary people in Nigeria does not take the budget passage as anything. He wants to eat. He wants to see his business. We want to see power, lies in his small, medium enterprise business. He wants to be empowered. He wants to have skills. So he does not understand that you pass a budget of 17 trillion. He does not understand all those things. He wants to see light in the village. He wants to see good road. So we want this administration, as Mr. President is winding up his administration, he should follow this budget intently, intentionally, closely. I believe I will still have opportunity when we will come to the point that we will start discussing. We are still studying the content of the budget to details. By that, we'll be able to analyze and go into full detail of analysis of the content of the budget. Thank you.
Yeah, I must thank you so much for your time. Engineer Kenneth is the Executive Director, Speak Out Africa Initiative. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you, Nigerians.
All right, we'll take a quick break now, and when we return, we'll be looking at what the papers are saying on the program this morning on ITV.